Morning is simply the best R&B all day. Take us everywhere. Your smartphone, in your car, to work, or live at KissWTLZ.com. We're Kiss 107.1.
Well, good evening, Saginaw. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray. I am your host, Kareem Bowen, and we are here to get into a very interesting conversation, as we often do. I'm in the studio with my main man, the Rob Father. Rob, why don't you give a shout out to the people?
What's up, Straight Talk audience? Rob Father here. Happy to be here. Happy to see you here.
He gave y'all that urban flair. What's up, Straight Talk audience? Y'all, what's going on? We're here today. It is a gloomy Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. But this is what we have to expect when we are here in Michigan. It's interesting that last week we had some 70-degree weather. We didn't really get much fall temperatures on there, and we've jumped right into the cold stuff. And I'm hoping that we don't jump right into the cold stuff, if you know what I mean, Rob.
Works for me either way.
Oh man, come on! You used to be in the hills over there in Philly with all the cold weather. This is
actually Nova Scotia and Maine.
Nova Scotia and Maine.
Yes.
Okay.
I lived in Nova Scotia for 3 years, so I'm used to the cold up there, definitely. But then Nova Scotia is surrounded by water, which shields the island, this so to speak, from most of the cold that you would feel here in the States.
All places I would only like to visit during the summertime. All right, so we want to thank you guys for tuning in today. We're going to do a special tribute. I really wanted to, Colin Powell, his passing was on last week. They haven't done this official address and all that other stuff. Have they done?
No, the funeral things have not been
released. So I think that it is apropos. I wanted to.
I hope he lies in state in the Rotunda, because he deserves that.
He absolutely does. And so today we're going to pay some homage to him today. As I said to you before, we did this on the other show because it was. Then when it was recorded, it was right after the event.
The other show being United Shades of Gray, heard on WSGW, AM and FM, 7 o'clock right after this show.
That was a shameless plug, but I thank my producer for doing so.
Hey.
He is what I call, he was our greatest American hero. They used to say G.I. Joe was, but Colin Powell, the great American hero. And so we're excited. I'm excited to share today with you his 13 rules for leadership. I think that this is directly in line with, I think, what our community needs. He was a great leader, even though he was very different in terms of where we figured ourselves to be in terms of our politics. When it came to who he was as a man of integrity, man of character, we saw him, hitch the party. He understood. This is what I like, Rob. He understood the dynamics of the hour at hand when President Obama was running for president. Yes. And being a strong Republican, very involved with the party, serving with the previous administration, everything that was going on, he was like, I recognize our moment in history. And he stood with President Obama and advocated for him being president. So I thought that was a really great opportunity moment in history. Yep. We saw that he did not lose his card like Condoleezza Rice did. I would talk about Condi.
Oh my God.
Y'all, Condi is y'all, girl. Y'all can have her. I was fighting with my sister. She has done some things.
Condoleezza Rice, the former Secretary of State, National Security Advisor.
Absolutely. So she's done some things. We'll talk about that in just 1 second.
Oh my gosh.
Man.
You're gonna mess up a sister, man.
Man. Now, I'm not going down. It's real. It's real. It is real. Because we're going to talk a little bit about this, Rob, and I know you want me to do a whole show on this, and it's coming. I just got to line up the right people I know who can have the conversation. I think Dr. Dawn Hinton and Dr.
Saginaw State University.
Clark that was here on last week. Yes. Very powerful sister. These are individuals when we have conversations.
Both on the show at the same time.
They would be amazing.
Oh yes.
So that's what I'm going to bring them in, because those are my educators that keep me where I need to be as it relates to Black in America. And there were some things that Dr. Dawn had challenged me on that I didn't necessarily agree with her eye to eye. But the more I learned, I'm like, I guess she's a doctor for a reason. And she's right. So we're going to get them in here. We're going to talk about critical race theory, because we see that it's in what's on my mind section on today, because we see that playing a part in our current politics with the election that's taking place in Virginia. They made this entire election. One of the Democratic individual that's running for election said that parents should not be involved in the educational process of students. They should not be determining what should be in that educational curriculum. And the Republican challenge, he seized it and he's like, yep, they want to teach our kids all this critical race theory, which is making America, tear us apart and our values are being thrown. So now it is really about, what do we call those white doves or something what is the thing that distracts us? It's about those distractions instead of really about the issues that are at hand. But let's get in here. Since we're already here, we're talking about what's on my mind. I want to begin by giving a kudos to, I was a part, myself and Yvonne Daniels here at the radio station. We're both a part of a summit that took place this weekend from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. As a matter of fact, before my show was coming on, they were talking about the Innocent Summit, and it took place this past Saturday. Rob, to be very honest, when they asked me to do it, I said yes because of the individuals that asked me, and I had not researched the details of what was going on, and I really wish they would have engaged me to a greater ability because I did not know what was going on. But preparing for the moment, as I got closer to the date, I started reading up on what was happening. And it was one of the most, I think, exciting, informational, empowering sessions that I've seen as it relates to the criminal justice system and prisoner rights and the prison reform system. And so those of you who are listening, maybe you missed out on the events as they took place on this past Saturday, like I said, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I was a part of a panel for religious leaders and what was the role, as it relates to prison reform and criminal justice reform and social justice. You know me, I preach on Sunday, and we'll be marching down the streets on Monday, demanding change to happen. And I have no issue with speaking truth to power, but this was such a powerful conference. Those individuals that put this on, some guy, Dominic McBride and Michelle McGregor, formerly the CEO over at the First Ward Community Center, and MAM, I'm not sure what MAM LLC is now, but there's a new thing that she is doing, so kudos on that, and good luck on that transition. But it was amazing. Aaron McKissick, Minister Reverend Dr. Aaron McKissick.
I was on George Harvard's show, Community Connections, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
She was due to be here today until we had to cancel the show.
Okay, well, she was talking, I'm sure she was here to talk about her role in this Innocent Summit, right. And it was phenomenal. Of that summit, there was a prosecutor by the name of Ben Schaefer, and I sent him an email during his speech while he was talking. I was like, this dude is bad, as a white guy. But he understood. He was one of those brothers who I would consider an ally leaning in. He's an attorney in Alabama, really fighting for equity in the CJ system. And he said that he refuses to use the term criminal justice system. And he said he'll never use that system until he sees some justice in the system.
Like some morons.
So he calls it the criminal system. He says, so he is an attorney in the criminal system fighting that they add justice to it. So I thought that was powerful. And then something else that he said, and when he said it, I was like, ooh, that is heavy. This dude is dropping these nuggets. I'm like, come on now, white chocolate. He was doing it. But attorney Ben Schaefer, he was really profound. His information was on point. He gave a historical perspective of why things are the way they are. He talked about the elements that we've been talking about on United Shades of Gray, of how this entire system is laced, and the foundation of it is in white supremacy, and how some of the rules and the qualifications and the mandates in terms of sentencing are really a product of, from slavery into the Jim Crow laws. And the underlying principle and theme is white supremacy, Rob. And so it was interesting to see him talk about it. He said this last thing, and I'm going to let you, because I see something.
No, I'm listening.
Okay, he said that the death penalty is the stepchild to lynching. That's powerful. Y'all need to let that marinate. So when our brothers are out there and they're being, put sentenced to death, and he talked about how the percentage of men that were being put to death by the death penalty and the number of them that have been exonerated, but those who have already died, there's no exoneration for death. And so he was just sharing that, this is such a horrific system where things are not what they seem. And we understood that, when we talked about this, Rob, in great detail slavery, once it was abolished, was not the end of the institution. It then became a penal system that they were hiring prisoners because they made laws to keep us incarcerated in jail, then send us right back to those same plantations. So it was a prolific conversation. Amazing kudos to the Innocence Summit. I can't wait till you guys do that again. Now that I know what it is, and I'm really looking to lean in. I think some workshops or some sessions notifying people of what you guys are doing. As a matter of fact, Erin McKissick, she called me and she said that she would love to come in and have a conversation with us in here as well. So I completely open that. Now, Rob, this is sad, but I want to talk. I didn't even want to talk about this, honestly, because when it comes to the village, it's not something that impacts us, but this is something that is very big in the news that's happening right now. That's the story with Alec Baldwin. I'm sure you heard.
Yes, I have.
It's horrific. He fires a gun, the prop
gun.
Yeah, prop gun that one of the prop manager or whoever it is, I can't remember their official title, had given him and told him that it was a cold gun, meaning that it was not loaded, it was empty. He fires the gun because he's the producer of this show that's going on, and when he fires it, one of the cast members or crew members was killed. They got shot with live ammunition and were killed. So our heart and prayers go out to them. Now, when we look at this, Rob, there is a really serious situation here because he's open to a lot of exposure as it relates to litigation, because whether he hired the crew. So in essence, he has a responsibility to make sure that the people that he hires they're doing things according to a practice that is most safe and is going to protect everyone that's on crew. So he's open for some litigation.
Well, today's news, I said that legal experts say that Alec Baldwin won't face charges because when these actors do their thing with the props, they're not responsible for what's happening with those props. But those props are supposed to be safe to begin with. And so he's picking it up the gun, whatnot, wounding one person, killing another, whatnot. Completely accidental, according to what the investigation is showing.
Absolutely.
So it's not like Alec Baldwin had any intentional,
No criminal. He won't have any criminal prosecution, but
that doesn't mean he won't face civil charges.
That's what I'm talking about. So, we live in a very litigious society, so yes. I can imagine him lawyering up for this. But this is a sad situation all the way around. He was seen with the victim's family after this event, and so we're hoping that things work out with that. That is just such a horrible situation to have to deal with. I was listening this weekend, and my weekend is kind of like the time of debrief from all of the madness that's on CNN. My family thinks I'm crazy because I watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC, World News. I'm on all of it because I want to know what's going on.
Information overload.
I'm a consumer of information. I want to know what's going on. And you know what? Before I get to this, man, I saw a piece that, because Vanessa Bryant is now being deposed. She's going through her deposition for the death of her husband and her daughter, Gigi, Kobe Bryant and Gigi. And so now she's being deposed because she has a lawsuit against the department and how they handled the case. And there was information, I guess, there was pictures that we probably didn't see here that were leaked outside of the station, outside of the police department, that was handling the investigation, and they made their way back to her of her family's dead bodies. She also was saying how she learned about their horrific death on Twitter. She was on social media getting ready to post something, and all of a sudden she started seeing R.I.P. Kobe, R.I.P. Kobe.
Where I learned it.
I mean, but it happens.
Right.
Now we have to understand that we live in a very different world, and social media now is, they get to jump on reporters. Reporters always wanted to get the scoop before, but social media is so real because where it happens, there are always witnesses, and everyone has a camera, which makes them these, spontaneous news entities, and so. I'm tripping because I think it's sad because we don't think about how individuals are impacted.
But then there's pros and cons to that sort of thing because that worked for us with George Floyd. So sometimes it does work for us. If we had it through Rodney King or some other things happening in the past, it would have helped. But then
absolutely,
on the flip side, there's always a negative side.
Absolutely. And thank you for correcting me because I was about to get on my soapbox, and you're absolutely right. I heralded the young lady who recorded the George Floyd situation as an American hero, her being bold enough and not afraid in the face of the police telling them to get off the curb and stop videoing. She continued to do so. But I look at it, and the flip side of this is the part that the families are often not notified in a proper manner. And, it's crazy. We've told our family members, younger, especially this younger generation, something happens to a family member, you want to let the family know so that, they're not finding out through all of these crazy reasons. Ideally, yeah. And so the first thing that people do now is they share everything on social media.
Let me relate this real quick as a veteran. Now, in the military, we try to protect our families from that sort of thing too. If something happens to a service member, we try to handle that internally with the ombudsman and whatnot before it gets out to the press. Today, though, you can't do this sort of thing. I'm wondering how the military handles that with everyone having a camera and everyone being on instant communication. Exactly. You can't order a person not to communicate to his family, hey, I just heard so-and-so got shot. Let me go tell my friend who tells their friend, etc.
And so I guess the thing is this, if it looks like it's something where there's going to be need for, the police to be involved, or for criminal justice allies and those who are standing and marching for justice to be involved, I think we broadcast. But if it's a situation in which you just want to get the scoop, because everyone, they don't even care. They don't care. No. I was going to say they don't think about it, but they don't have the empathy to even care about the fact whether or not these family members know. So we've got to begin to figure out how do we use social media to report things that need to be reported, but then also have some sensitivity toward the families that will eventually be notified or see this information as we put it out there in streaming format. All right, so I want to go to Eric Swallow. Now, Eric is a U.S. I always get Eric and Kinzinger, who is a Republican. I always get these two mixed up. But Eric Swalwell is a U.S. representative from California. He serves on the Judiciary Committee, and there was a tape that he received. Someone sent a message to him, and he recorded it, and he played it on the air. And they were talking about, how we hope that, these immigrants that come across the border kill you and your family, and they feed your bodies to the dogs, you pig. It was really horrific. And to think that this man has to raise his family in the situation was crazy. And it was because of him being on that January 6th commission to find out the truth of what's going on, that this is happening. Now, when I think about this, there were kind of a couple areas that they were talking about that I think are important for all Americans to really pay attention to, because this is where, we talk about those dog whistles.
Yes.
Those words that are used that kind of signal to America, a certain sector of America, something that we're talking about. And so he made this conversation about immigrants, and as a matter of fact, that everybody who is not one of the indigenous people that already existed here. And by the way, there were some blacks already here when Christopher Columbus came. So I need to let y'all know that fact as well. We'll talk about Pangea.
Black people are not immigrants because we were dragged here.
Absolutely. I mean, not only that, but there were some of us that came here in experience. We'll talk about Pangea and a whole nother experience. Right. But the indigenous people that were here, they were here. And so if you're not a part of that nationality, then you are an immigrant. And I don't get this. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how you came, and we always say TikTok, the kids always say TikTok, the game is live. Well, guess what? The ones who say that are the ones who are already in the game. Mm-hmm. And so we see that system happening. And I do think that we need to have some restraints on how we do that and do it in a way that is safe for our country. But then he also talked about this being, quote unquote, our country. It was similar to that fact of we need to make America great again.
That dog whistle thing.
Those dog whistle terms. And then he went on to talk, and he talked about President Trump was our president. There was an equality or when he equaled Trump to American values. And, this is a very serious issue. If we thought the last election was a tough situation, I think that you all need to strap your boots up and be prepared, because this one is going to be one for the books. And it unnerves me, Rob, and it makes me concerned about how polarized we have become as a nation. Our politicians can't even govern because they're afraid of what, their constituents might say, because now all of a sudden in our mainstream politics, we now have conspiracy theorists who are taking over and creating these crazy narratives that America is buying into. And so we need, we're in a tough situation, Rob. But anyways, Eric was talking about this, and I heard those dog whistles. And then President Trump, he was in a speech, and he said that the real
former President Trump.
He's still a president. But anyways, and I said president, I can't believe it. Number 45. Yeah. Wow, yeah. It got me. Number 45, he was out giving the speech, and this is what he said. And I thought this was so insensitive, and I thought that, someone has to do something. I feel like this man must be stopped. He said that the real insurrection happened on January 3rd of 2020. 2021. So the real insurrection, 2021. Yeah. So he was saying that what happened on January 6th was not an insurrection, but what had taken place with them installing Joe Biden as a president, the next president of the United States, that was the real insurrection. It was a takeover. How can we allow someone to be so inflammatory and yet give them a place in our democracy, and not consider that he is a danger to the existence of the very democracy that he desires to lead? So
the lie gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and
so with that being said, I think that takes us to the next thing that's on my mind. And I've been tooting my horn and yelling and screaming, and hopefully that someone will begin to pay attention. And that is this issue with the filibuster. Now, Rob, the filibuster is a very key piece to how our government legislates. And many of you are probably like, what in the world is a filibuster?
It's not even constitutional.
Yeah, what you say?
It's not even constitutional.
No, but it's a way that they've kind of allowed, the premise for it was that those who were in the minority, as it relates to who were in the Senate,
political minority, right?
Yeah, the political minority would not be left voiceless if the majority has enough people that they can just run the cloud. So I want to give you a quick overview of what we're talking about when we talk about we have to do away with the filibuster temporarily or suspend portions of it. And basically, when we look at how our House governs, we should look at it as the tortoise and the hare. When we look at the House itself, the U.S. House, it would be considered the hare because it's able to do. I mean, they create laws all the time. House law this, and they can create them, and they happen as soon as these representatives can get together and pass laws. So they can get them through with pretty much ease with a simple majority, and they can push it through to the Senate. Now, the Senate has a different requirement as it is for legislation to get through there. Out of the 100 senators that are there, they have to have a 60 senator agreement, so there has to be some consensus, so that if there is a ruling party, they have to have some buy-in at least by the other party to make it a bipartisan effort, so that they're not completely steamrolled through this process.
So right? They need to make sure they have the vote, so that when they take it to the president, if he vetoes it, they can come back and override that veto.
So this is kind of what that process is.
Big, I love it.
Okay, and so as we go through this process, it is a way for us to. We're currently in a situation. There's a slim majority in the House, right, the U.S. House, and there is a 50-50 split with Kamala Harris, our vice president, being the decisive vote. Right. So they're saying that if we could do away with the filibuster, because they're not going to allow these issues of voting rights to take place on the floor. We see all across the nation. They're not targeting, your money. They're not targeting. There's a whole conversation about raising taxes that they're not even talking about. The issue of their concern, and this should make and spark everyone who is hearing this conversation. This should make you spark up. The thing that they're trying to do is stop us from voting.
And once they do that, everything else is downhill.
Absolutely. Because once I take over and I command control over your vote, I then have the ability to change the taxes code. I have just what we saw in the last. I'm going to do whatever we want to do, whether you like it or not. And historically, in these midterm elections, when there is one party that has both the House and the Senate, there's usually a pretty big overturn, because people tend to like our government being balanced to some degree. But so we're going to see what happens here. But I'm going to tell you that if they don't do something with this, now here's the caveat. On the other side of this, so if we do this, we make this change now, and the next season the Republicans are in power, they're going to utilize the very same process to railroad. You can believe that your children will never hear what critical race theory is. You can believe that there will be more decreased taxes for the rich, that top 1%. you can believe that there will be more infringement upon the freedom and the right to vote. So this is a very tricky situation. Although I want to go in there with the hairs and say, let's make this change. We need the stale, pragmatic pace of the tortoise. And really, I mean, we really need to appeal to those senators. I mean, Joe Manchin, come on, Joe, what are you doing? If they're going to do something, they need to vote and they need to stand up for America.
I think right now, President Biden is hosting him at the White House, or no, he's in Delaware now.
Yeah, but he seems to be favorable of a 1.79 million social package attached to this major infrastructure package that we've been talking about before. And it is believed that by this coming Wednesday, Thursday, they'll have some movement on the structural package, not structural, but the infrastructure package.
Right.
And they will be moving shortly thereafter with the social spending package. And so we'll see what happens. I think this is America's government in action or in inaction, whichever you decide. But we need to see something happen. It's in crisis. We're in peril.
Yes.
I feel like we have a healthcare war that's going on, and we got a political war that's going on, and it's hard to determine who's on what side. And so we need some real leadership. I always say that leaders arise in the midst of crisis, and we're going to talk about Colin Powell on today because he is one of those leaders. So there's my piece on that. Rob, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the real issue or the real story of the day, which is Colin Powell, an American hero, has gone on October 18, 2021. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more Straight Talk.
Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS 107.1. Now at Menards, save big money on your next flooring project with 11% off everything. Update your home with Great Lakes.
I hate to see people just sit on their butt and not vote. Next year, I mean, that bothers me.
It's crazy.
Are you live? I don't see anybody commenting on your.
There's people here, but I don't see people commenting.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, that's interesting.
Usually, what's that dude's name?
There's a number of people in here, yeah.
What's the young man's name that comes all the time? Young brother that you had him in the studio one time.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeff, yeah.
You know, I'm saying that I'm live, but I don't see that I'm live. We're gonna see what's going on.
One minute.
Hey, Michigan, come check out the draft maps of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting
Mm.
Commission for your congressional, Senate, and House districts at michigan.gov/MICRC. Tell us what you think of the maps on October 26th.
Says we're live, Rob.
30 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Dordt Financial Center. Your comments can also be heard remotely or through the MICRC online.
I don't know why the comments aren't showing up.
At michigan.gov.
What's that?
I don't know why your comments aren't showing up.
CRC.
Did you
30
know
seconds.
that United Healthcare helps connect you to doctors and therapists with 24/7 access to virtual care? So I can.
I don't have a notification that we're live,
Yeah. Or a doctor appointment from my car.
but it's showing that we're live on here.
Yeah, I see him broadcast up
I
there.
don't even like when people say this thing. Couch appointment it is.
Stand by.
Virtual visits are just one of the ways United Healthcare helps connect you to better health. Learn more at uhc.com. Plan benefits may vary.
It's Straight Talk.
Oh, we're back with more of Straight Talk, given to you straight, no chaser, no filter. Today, we're going to spend some time and really just celebrate the American icon, the superhero, the American hero, the G.I. Joe of the Black community, and that's Officer, Secretary of State. Great guy, Colin Powell. Now, Rob, when we had a conversation about him before, you were talking about you corrected some things, and I think that it's important for us to understand this as to what his greatest achievement was versus him being a 4-star general.
Right.
Okay, and you were saying that in American history, you mentioned something about General Chappie. Give us a quick history lesson on who General, because I thought that was very interesting.
General Chappie, Daniel Chappie James, was a 4-star general who was one of my first black generals in the United States Air Force. And he rose to the ranks like Colin Powell did years later. and became the chairman or in charge of NORAD, our North American Aerospace Defense Center, which is located in Colorado. And I only learned about him. I was in Air Force Junior ROTC back in high school. And I had black sergeants and officer teaching us junior ROTC at the time, and I spoke highly of him because one of the officers worked for him. So that's how, because of him, when Colin Powell came on scene, I got attracted to Colin Powell because I said, oh, my, here's a black man of high rank in the military that I could look up to. Even though I was in the Navy, I still looked up to this guy because anytime a black person, male or female, rises up in the ranks, that means inspirational fodder for me. So I should mention that about Chappie James.
So his name was Chappie James.
Right, his nickname is Chappie James. Daniel Chappie James, United States Air Force General.
Wow, that is so cool. That was a bit of history that I was not aware of, and so when you mentioned that caught my attention, because I love to share these moments in history, especially when we see so much of our history being rewritten. It's crazy, Rob, how we have not only revisionists to American history as it has already been revised, right, but there are now, we're trying to delete, omit, change things that really talk to who we are at the core of our existence. And one of the things that was so important about what we were talking about when we were talking about the issue of moving the filibuster so that we could talk about voting legislation, and we also mentioned the idea of critical race theory. And we're going to do a conversation for those who are listening on critical race theory, because many people don't have a real understanding of what it is.
Right.
And at the heart of it, what critical race theory is. And someone says, well, why are they introducing this? They're trying to brainwash our kids. No, I'm going to tell you the real reason and the fear behind this particular type. And this is not new. This is something that has been here since the 80s or 1989.
Actually, long before that.
Long before that.
Right.
The idea is that we teach the whole story of how things have become the way that they are. It was similar to what we were talking about when the attorney in Alabama was saying that there's no justice in the criminal justice system. It's because there have been ideologies that have been pervasive from the time of slavery and the ending of slavery to the Jim Crow laws, and then the commissioning of these Jim Crow laws, which were all meant to make the black individual, the black man in particular, to be big, black, dark, ominous, one to be feared. And so it pushes these ideas and these thoughts and these concepts into the mainstream of how we do everything that we do, from politics to government to housing. There was a period of time in which, they had circled certain parts of our community. And we can see this even here on today. There's certain parts of our community that have been what I would consider redline. Redlining is when you don't allow loans and certain things and people to move into certain areas.
Right.
But there's also this idea that comes with critical race theory, that there are certain sections that they want to make sure that there is no home ownership.
Exactly.
And we've seen this
or
here.
The value of those homes are certain.
Absolutely.
Rate.
Because home ownership, it keeps the value of that property to a certain value, and it helps us to have an appreciable access to something that depreciates over time. But we see the pop-up of these, like for instance, and this is no slight to anybody, I'm giving it to you straight, no chaser. If it hurts you, change it. But the fact of the matter is, there was a community, and Dr. Pugh, and there were others that were a part of this community. And I'm trying to think, right behind Saginaw High, I know there's like a Rosa Park Drive or Harriet Tubman Drive over right off of, you're not from here, Rob, so you don't know what I'm talking about. But those who are listening, you'll know what I'm talking about. Right off of, I believe it's Hess, and one of the side streets by where the fairground was. There was a community where we had individuals saying, hey, why don't we build up the east side? Why buy houses on the west side? We don't have to do that. So they built these beautiful homes in this community with the idea of bringing beautiful home and raising the property value in the community, and making a kind of like we have what we call back in the day, back probably the 70s and 80s, Black Hollywood. Now, Rob, Black Hollywood in the Black community is it's a subdivision off of Outer Drive in Buena Vista. And it's probably I would say there's probably 60 homes that are over there. But these were General Motors, working individuals with good jobs. Some of them were accountants, different individuals. And they decided to stay and fight for their community. Right. And they built really nice homes in their particular area. They were doing the same thing over here behind Saginaw High. And those of you that know exactly what I'm talking about, I can't think of the name of the subdivision, but all of the streets in that subdivision are named after Black heroes. So Harriet Tubman, I think there's a MLK Street or something like that. And it was a beautiful project. So what they did, and this is how this happens, they didn't allow, not the builders, there was a plan that came into place that the land that was right adjacent to the fairground now became mandated as housing space. But here's the issue, where you have these homeowners trying to build value and equity in their community. They then create a subdivision that's probably about the same size right across the street from this, off this main street. I don't know if it's Y Street or whatever the name of that street is. And they made these single family homes, but you can't buy them. You have to rent them like endlessly, but there's not an opportunity towards home ownership. So what do you think is going to happen to those properties?
They're going to crash.
They're going to crash because home ownership teaches us the value of it. We teach our homes, even though homes are not necessarily always the best investment, it's the biggest one that we have.
Right.
And so it's going to allow the quality of those homes to be degraded. They were nice homes and it looked nice on the surface, but it was a system.
And the streets and everything along those same areas there.
Absolutely. And so now we have a section of this area which is really strong, and that community is standing together to hold the value of those homes and fight for what they can. And then right across the street, there was a plan that was in place. I don't care what you call it. It was a plan. If the homes were built and there's a subdivision there was a plan that was executed by whatever entities to fight or to overthrow what was happening across the road from there, where they were building positive forces and positive figures and imagery of home ownership and Black people living in the community and doing great things. And now those homes are really filled with a great deal of light. There's a lot of malls that were down there. Melvin's was down there. When I first moved here, all that went away. And even Big Boys restaurants. Down. So these are the types of things that, and someone would say, well, they were really trying to make sure that people had nice houses. There is an element on the surface that this is something to benefit the people, but underlying there is a whole system of white supremacy that says if we show them what happens when you give Black people homes and we don't give them the tools and the resources to keep those homes, then we will begin to look at going and having them move into your communities. If they do this to theirs, guess what's going to happen to yours? And so it has created this entire thing that we call the Great White Flight, where white America has.
I've seen it happen in Philadelphia.
Absolutely, you've seen it happen, and then we'll see the reverse of that, which is happening in our city. So y'all, I can't say wake up. I've been saying that for a long time. That all of us move out because we want to make it seem like the Jeffersons. We're moving up onto the east side or the west side to that brand new apartment, deluxe apartment in the sky. And then the moment you abandon your community, they come back and buy it for pennies on the dollar.
Yep.
So they devalue it so they can come back and they buy it pennies on the dollar. They're giving tax incentives and tax breaks, for 15 and 20 years to just come in because they're bringing redevelopment. So when white America comes into your community, it now is a process of redevelopment and empowerment and enrichment. But when Black America comes in, oh my goodness, they're going to tear up your homes. And we have bought into these systems, and it's really at the base of this. The base of this understanding is all founded and lies in white supremacy. And so we've got to begin to begin to take a look. So Edwin, I say that's why they did what they did by building Brookwood off of Hess. That's exactly the name of that subdivision. Thank you very much, Mr. Singleton. But these are systems that are in place. So critical race theory, CRT.
Look it up.
You have to look it up. And we're going to have a conversation because I think our community needs to understand why it's important. Because what it does is it begins to take, why are the numbered streets from James to Remington, why are these numbered streets? Why, first of all, they're littered with African-American men and women now,
right.
But why are these the more dangerous streets? And someone would look at it because it's poor Black people living there.
Mm-hmm.
When the relative,
all the shootings and everything you hear about that, you don't hear anything about in the township or whatnot.
But it does not give you an understanding of how resources were pulled,
right.
How situations were thrown in when people were released from prison that were having violent offenses. Guess what communities they release them to? And then they want you to tame the shoe, which they couldn't do the 30 years that they were incarcerated.
Right.
So there is an entire system in critical race theory. It begins to address not just the issues or the resultants, but it gives you the understanding of why things are the way that they are. And I think it's important for us to have that conversation. And so it's important for our kids to understand when they grow up in these communities that there was a system at play that really spoke to them and really tried to keep them in those places. And so what a white America has an issue with is that when we talk about in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and this ain't all white America, but I need you to understand that a large piece of America, one of the issues that they have is, and the reason they want their kids taught this stuff is because it equalizes the American history story. So we've all were raised in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and that he discovered America. Well, you can't discover something with the people that already exist. And so critical race theory would begin to explain and express to us that before he got here, and he didn't come in and they, pull the leg off a turkey and getting ready to have Thanksgiving coming up. The indigenous people were here and they said, how? Maize, you call it corn, we call it maize. These crazy things that have been reported and we continually hear about how this went down. No, it was a bloodbath. So critical race theory says, listen, they came here and they overtook, they overthrew, and this is the way that America was settled. And so now those same individuals will put on not I was going to say plantations, but in these reserves, and they were pushed reservations in certain areas, and they were given certain land, and then when we needed more of the land, we put smallpox in their blankets.
We dare come here to tell the indigenous people where they should live and where they can live.
Absolutely. So critical race theory gives the whole picture. Many people feel that this is reverse, it's racism against white people. Well, the fact of the matter is, when you hear the story, I'm sorry, white America, I love many of you all. But the fact of the matter is, when America has a very bloody, dark, black problem when we look at our history.
And it's not just black people. We have Asians here too.
Absolutely. And it talks
against.
about all of that.
Yes.
So we're going to lean in. We'll talk about it one day moving forward. But let's get to American hero Colin Powell. And I want to talk about his 13 rules for leadership. Let me give a little bit history of his background, and then we're going to get right to the conversation because I know time will move, and today is of the essence. All right, so our great American hero, Colin Powell, from 1937, April 5th. His birthday was in April, so if you were born in April, you share a birthday to October 18th. We heard of that. He was in the hospital. He was fighting off some blood cancer disease that was going on. He eventually succumbed to some COVID issues. But he was a statesman, a diplomat.
Fully vaccinated. We don't want to brush over that. He was fully vaccinated.
Important. Thank you, Rob. He was fully vaccinated, which gives us a whole other conversation there. He was fully vaccinated. He had some primordial conditions, underlying things that he had to deal with. And because of that, and he had the booster, I believe. He already had his booster.
But the blood disorder he had was not effective against the vaccine, which is why it took his life.
And so we need to really make sure that we're getting vaccinated. We still have to keep this idea of social distancing in, washing our hands, keeping 6 feet away, making sure that we're not in these. People are going to push you to areas where our community is not ready to go. So we've got to be smart and willing to make sure that we do and stand up for our rights. So he continues. He was a statesman, this diplomat, as I mentioned earlier, a 4-star general who served the 65th United States Secretary of State. That's what he was from 2001 to 2005. He was the first African-American Secretary of State, and that's why we use that one, Rob, right? Because that was his highest ranking office. Served as the 16th United States National Security Advisor from 87 to 89. The 12th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 89 to 93. This is amazing.
First black Joint Chiefs of Staff.
First one, absolutely. Powell was born in New York City in 1937, raised in South Bronx to 2 Jamaican parents, Luther and Maul Powell. They immigrated to the United States from Jamaica. He was educated in New York City public schools and received a bachelor degree in geology from City College of New York. I had an opportunity to go to City College sometime back when we were doing an event down there, and it was an amazing college that is in Harlem. It's in the upper West Side in Harlem, and City College, you get just past 125th Street. I think it's like 136th Street, 35th Street, and there's this amazing college that is with parks and benches and sidewalks.
Colin Powell moment?
Absolutely. Colin Powell moment. That's a whole other story. But anyways, Colin Powell has been an amazing American hero. And so I want to get into some of the things. We know those accolades. We know that he was the 65th United States Secretary of State, serving under Republican President George W. Bush. Secretary of State Powell gave a speech to the United Nations, what they would say was a blight from that Iraq War. But he was amazing in how he handled that first Gulf War. And so we salute him, his life, his legacy, and the great role he played as our great American hero. He was our Black G.I. Joe. All right, so Secretary Powell's 13 rules for leaders. And the first rule is, it ain't as bad as you think. It would look better in the morning. So he encourages you and all of those who are out there, whatever you're going through, his first rule is you got to always remember that it's not as bad as it looks. You know, anything that we deal with initially, the initial shock or the initial factors that we deal with seems like it's insurmountable, but we have to begin to give ourselves a break, come back to it, and take another look at it. Number two, get mad, then get over it. And I shared with you, Rob, before, I think that this is a quality that many of us, we really can learn from, because many of us get mad and we allow that anger we hold on to it. We hold it in our heart. We allow it to fester. And then it becomes something greater than what it was really intended to be. And many people, and we see this happening in the dynamics with families. Families will hold on to these issues. They get emboldened in their stance, and really they can't even begin to remember what was the issue that they were really upset with in the very first place. But we've got to learn to get mad. And the word of God says, be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down in your wrath. So get mad, deal with it, let it go, and let's move over. I wish somebody would say that to our Congress, our U.S. Congress. Get mad, get over it, and let's get back to politics. Number three, avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. That is a powerful statement. Let's avoid having our egos so close to our position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. And there's many people who lead, and this is the lowest form.
When the ego falls, when your position falls, your ego
goes with it. Right. Okay. So many people lead positionally, and this is really the lowest form of leadership that we could have. And basically what that says is that you're going to do it because I said so, because I'm the leader. Authoritarian. And our egos are attached to that position. And the moment we're no longer in that position, we also have a blow to our ego. So let's make sure that we adhere to rule number three.
Sounds like somebody we know. Number 45.
Number 5, I just want to be president. Number 4, it can be done. And I said this before, and I'll say it again when I hear this. It sounds reminiscent of another campaign slogan for president. Yes, we can. I think that we have to begin to understand that regardless of what someone else does, you know, Rob, I've had so many instances being a younger guy doing the things and operating in the areas that I have. I've had so many people say, you know what, we've tried that before. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I laugh because I'm like, you know, the moment you tell me that I can't do something is when I'm going to really show you that I can. Right. I'm going to lean in. Right. So we have to be able to say to ourselves that we have to, you know, all of the negative feedback, all of the negative press, everything that everyone tries to put in your mind, you cannot internalize that. But when they tell you that you can't, you have to show them that it can be done. All right. Rule number 5, be careful what you choose. You may get it. My grandmother used to always say, boy, you better be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you pray for. Be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And so it talks about, I think that really deals with our passion. Sometimes we ask for things because we see what other people have, but we want to keep up with the Joneses. But then once we get those things, we have to realize that the Joneses have to pay these bills, and they have to pay these credit card debts, and they have to pay these mortgages. And we see them living a great life, but we don't see them living for paycheck to paycheck.
It may be a good positive. It may be a positive consequence or a negative consequence. And even if you get a positive consequence, like I wish I was rich, now what I'm going to do with the money? Now I'm going to deal with the negative consequences of dealing with all that money.
What did Biggie Smalls say? More money, more problems. Come on, y'all.
Exactly.
so be careful what you choose for. You just might get it. Number 6. Don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision. I'm going to say that one more time. Don't allow adverse facts stand in the way of good decisions. What does that mean to you, Rob?
Don't let adverse facts affect. Well, hey, go by the facts, but don't let them deter you what you need to do.
Absolutely. Everything that you hear, when you are determined to do something great, you know, adverse facts can be something very simple. Right. We've been talking a lot about entrepreneurs. There's a lot of young Black folks who are doing great things, starting businesses.
Yes,
And so an adverse fact would be like, hey, you're not going to get the approval on the loan that you want.
Right.
You know, or, you know,
You're not gonna
this,
sell as much as you want. Or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I know you want to do it in this area, but that area is not going to work.
That's all
Business don't work in
discouraging,
that area.
you know?
Yeah, so don't allow those adverse facts, because for everything that you can find something adverse, you can find something positive.
Right, because
for.
every profession would be based on poor or previous information. Well, maybe last year I couldn't do it in COVID, but this year I may be, you know.
And not only that, but just because you couldn't do it doesn't mean that I'm not able to do it. You know, and so I always get those things. And if I am convicted in my heart to do something, I don't allow what other people say stop me from doing those
Just
things.
back to the other rule you had there earlier from Colin Powell, you mentioned there.
Which one?
Two others before that. Don't tell me what I can't do.
It can be done. That's right. Number 5. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. All right. So then we go to number 7. These are rules for leaders by Colin Powell. And these are things that he lived his life by. Number 7, you can't make someone else's choices. You shouldn't let someone else make yours. Bam! Drop the mic, walk away.
That's right.
We have to take ownership
Think for
over
yourself.
our decisions and begin to think for ourselves. I'm a firm believer that mentorship is so very important. I'm a firm believer that we have to take into account the wisdom of the elders and those who are around us who have walked the walk. Because, you know, one thing that I realized every year that I get, and, you know, my mother, my parents, my grandparents, uncles, and I, they've been that same age once before.
But, you know, there's a difference between that and giving advice. Now, with my son, I can speak from experience as a father. He calls me often about certain things. I say, I can't tell you what to do. And he knows I won't tell him what to do. I can only advise you. Of course, then he would come back to me and say, Dad, you were so right. You know, I should have done X, Y, and Z. But at least I advise
He's
him.
made his own decision.
And that's important to us. I let you make your own decision and live with the consequences, good or bad.
That's good. Because so many times people get mad when people don't. And you know, Rob, I'm going to tell you, and that's an element of control. I used to get mad when I'm like, listen, I told you what to do, and you did this, and it didn't work, and you wouldn't listen. And I feel like that is a control issue.
Yes.
And so one of the things that we're learning from that particular lesson is that we can't make other people's choices. You need to let go of control.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that you need to control is your life and your decisions.
That's right.
All right. Number 8, check small things. Check the small things. It is the little foxes that destroy the vine. If you can't be faithful to the small things, you'll never be great over plenty. All right. Number 9, share credit. I say this all the time.
Honor to whom honor.
Man, as we continue, and it's going to be a key lesson for leaders. As we move into this next decade, as we move forward in life and in later portion of the 21st century, post-COVID has changed a lot of things. And I used to always say that people left jobs or systems or churches because of the people. But now I'm realizing that people leave systems because they can. And so there are some things that leaders must now begin to do and understand differently. And one of the things that is going to be so virtually important, if you're dealing with millennials and Z-Geners, that's anyone under the age of 38 and under, you're really going to have to begin to understand that these individuals operate from a place of being able to know that I am effectively a part of the system. I'm a part of the team. What I have to say matters. They like to be included in the things that are going on. And one of the ways that you get to lead them is by sharing praise. You have to be willing to share the credit. When you have a great success, you make them a part of that great success. And you build people, and by building people, you build great leaders. And that's so very important for us to remember. Number 10, remain calm, be kind. Rob, what does that mean to you? Remain calm. This is principle number 10 from Colin Powell's Rules of Leadership. Remain calm, be kind.
Hey, I don't know, because I'm a temperamental man at times. You know, sometimes I hold my temper in. Be patient is what I'm thinking. You know, to look at things. Well, if you're angry about something, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be nasty about certain things.
Well, for me personally,
you use some tactfulness.
Absolutely. For me personally, you know, when I hear the word kind is something that means there are probably only 3 individuals, maybe 4 in my lifetime that I've ever used the term kind.
Okay.
Now I'll say, they're super nice. That's a nice person. But kind to me as an individual, it is someone who, in the midst of adversity, in the midst of an opportunity that they could easily walk away, they dig in and they remained kind in their actions. The way
Okay.
that they express themselves.
That I can relate to. Yes.
And so the idea is to remain calm. I'll tell you, I'm learning. I'm not a hothead, but I am a quick tongue. I got a silver tongue. So I guess it's one of the reasons when you come at me, I've been known to be able to be that person that I can say to you exactly what I feel, and you leave here and not know that you've been struck and that your neck is no longer attached to the rest of your body. And when you walk off, your head falls off your shoulders. And that is not what this is saying. He's saying that we've got to remain calm. So many times we respond based upon our raw, natural emotions. And it's been said a million times that when you respond out of your emotions, you always respond the wrong way or always make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to be calm. That means keep your collective. Stay cool, calm, and collected. And then be kind. When you can operate in goodness, and that's what kind means to me, operating in goodness, regardless of what the situation may dictate, is when you walk into the place that you are now operating in kindness. And I've not seen very many people who can say that I would label as kind. My grandmother was a very kind individual. I saw her be used by people, be abused by people, and she would still love them. Because she realized that her actions and how she responded was really more indicative of who she was than what somebody else did to her. All right, so number 11 of Colin Powell's rules of engagement is have a vision, be demanding. Now, this is so powerful. This means so much to me. I sincerely believe that if people don't have a vision, then people, when we don't have a vision, people that are following us as leaders, the understanding is that they will no longer have a direction or a focus, and they'll cast off restraint, which means that they won't be focused on their intentions, focused on their work. If you want to be in a system and people are not being focused and really targeted toward the goal, don't give them a vision. But when we have a vision, then we are able to collectively come together, use our resources, our talents, and our abilities, and it's on focus. We get like a laser. The difference between the lights that are in the ceiling and a laser beam, other than the quantity, is the fact that a laser is focused light. And that focus makes all of the difference and gives us the ability to do destructive things to things that are in our way or to do great things, all right? Next, number 12, don't take counsel for your fears or naysayers. Don't take counsel of your fears or your naysayers. We spend
from them. Don't take it from them.
Don't take counsel of them.
Okay.
So right. So don't allow your fears or your naysayers to be the ones that really give you the advice.
Gotcha.
Because folks who are fearful have never done anything. I always say that the enemy to a new move is always an old move. And what that means is that we allow ourselves to get stuck in these ruts, and then we listen to people who have never been. If your leader is only a 5, you can never elevate above a 4.99999 because he's not been to places beyond that level. And so they won't be able to encourage and to challenge you to be your greatness. And oftentimes we listen to people who have an anointing or a capability that is less than ours, and we listen to them tell us that we can't do what our capabilities have every opportunity and the ability.
I think the goal is to surpass that leader who's at a limited point. That's what I try to do when I was in the military.
Every great leader should desire those that he leads to be better than he is.
Right, exactly.
That's what it calls.
And every parent should do the same thing. I aspire my son to be better than me.
Absolutely. I never understood the spirit of jealousy between parents and children, or leaders and those that they lead. Don't you understand that when your children fly like butterflies to great heights,
yes,
that is a part of who you are now ascending? So they give us the ability to live in certain spaces vicariously through them.
Yep.
So we don't want to take counsel of your fears or naysayers. I don't take on anyone else's fears. I'm not going to be fearful because you
I don't
are
have that
fearful.
room in my life.
I don't have to, absolutely. And number 13, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. I'm going to say that one again. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. Now, this is for those individuals, when you look at a glass, if it's half, is it half full or is it half empty? If you're able to see the positive in whatever situation you're dealing with, you will then see what you have in your toolkit as being something that has the ability to effectuate real change. If you look at the glass half full and you look at the pessimism in life, then you will begin to see is what you've been getting and you've been given is not enough. It's important for us to understand that when we are perpetually optimistic, it empowers us to be our absolute best self. So think positive. And there was the book name of the book, Think and Grow Rich. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So we have to be optimistic in the way that we live. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We want to give a shout out once again to those who are doing great things in our community. Thank you to the summit that took place on Saturday. Colin Powell, rest in power. We thank you. Thank you all for tuning in for another edition of Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen.
Listening to Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen on KISS 107.1. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen by the host, its guests, or call-ins